So in this video, I have cleaned up the lines of my gesture drawing from the previous video on laying in a still life. In cleaning up the lines, I am looking at my light source, which is coming from the upper right-hand side and kind of pointing somewhat directly at it. So if you'll notice, I've started working on some of the line, and on the right side, the lines are a little bit thinner versus the left side of some of my objects. Right now, I'm still working on cleaning things up. And yes, I did use a ruler to tighten up some of those long straight lines, especially in the box and the bottle. When you do that though, do it lightly so that you can still adjust the thickness of your lines when you're working with the sensitivity of line quality for light and dark. So areas where objects sit on a ground plane, that's where your darkest shadows will possibly be. So the lines there will get a little bit thicker, and then areas where they kind of recede away from light, or you see more contrast between light and dark, you can thicken up the line there. Areas where light is hitting it more directly, you'll want to compare from side to side, what edge looks a little bit darker, and make a decision on one side. The contour line will be a little bit lighter, the other side will be a little bit darker. So I'm just going through in like little areas here and there, cleaning up and defining some edges a little bit more. I've erased all of my, or most of my, access lines and my sighting lines for angles. And now I'm cleaning up those ellipses. Typically, so in that one vase, where it goes concave a little bit, that's an area where it could gradually get a little bit darker. I keep breaking my leads through this drawing, by the way. Anyway, where it goes concave down that side contour, it can gradually get a little bit darker, and then where it flares out, the line can get lighter and more thin. And then where it tucks under, it'll start going into shadow, so you'll gradually thicken the line. That's sensitive line. That's how you do that, is applying a little bit less pressure versus a little bit more pressure gradually as you draw the contour line. And keep in mind, this is just a line drawing. We are not doing any tonal value or hatching or cross hatching. We're using strictly line, thick and thin, light and dark, to describe light and shadow, to give it some volume, and to describe value in general. A lot can be accomplished just using line. I lightly drew in the succulents in the pot, just gesture drawing them, and now I'm just going in and I'm going to clean up those lines too, and that ellipse. And that was a big ellipse. That was not the easiest thing to draw. Remember that anything that has a thickness has a lip to it, so you will see a double line, not a single line, because it's not paper thin. Compare what you see on the interior edge versus the outer edge of the lip. So that top flat part of the pot, or anything else that you're using. The underside of the foliage and the succulents is in shadow, so those lines will be darker, and then as they come around top, they're hit with the light, so they'll be more thin. And I'm sorry my focus is going in and out because of my head in the way, but you get the general idea. Just going object to object. I also put in the edges of my shadows. Shadows, really look at those. The closer the shadow is to its subject, the more defined that edge of the shadow will be. So you will have maybe a cleaner, more a line with more precision, more solid, and then as it moves away, it may get gradually softer and lighter. There is a lot of light in shadow, so you want to describe that and not just have a solid line to outline the whole shadow with the same thickness, because it doesn't really say anything about the values that are happening within the shadow. You can also, draw in some extra lines within your subject matter to kind of start mapping out different plane changes or shadows on your objects if you want. You don't have to at this point. This, is mostly like a outer contour drawing with some interior contour work for plane changes. And a really good rule of thumb is just to remember that anything that tucks away from light, even if it's very slight, it's very gradual. You want to go darker, and then when it flares out, go a little bit lighter, so lighten up your touch as you go through all your contours.